Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Coming to Canada would be their only way out of not being criminalized for health care.
Canada may be the closest option for many Americans seeking an abortion after the U.S. Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade. Also,
I'll have more to say about that as we come out of those meetings.
will he finish his term? Speculation rises about the future of Premier John Horgan.
They're also beautiful, they help our property values, they hugely help our mental health.
And as temperatures rise and climate change accelerates, experts say it's time to look to the trees in BC.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Anita is away. Fury and fear in the United States tonight following a seismic shift in women's constitutional rights. The Supreme Court in that country has overturned Roe v. Wade, the landmark decision protecting abortion rights in America for almost half a century. As Belle Puri explains, Canada may now be the closest abortion haven for many Americans.
Canada has long promised that clinics will be open for American women who want an abortion.
We've had conversations about what it could look like for Canada to support American women in need, and I know those conversations are ongoing.
Those who cross the border for reproductive services will pay out of pocket or through their own insurance.
Some of the added barriers to get to Canada would be things like a passport, potentially longer stays, and navigating a healthcare system that isn't the one that they're used to. So it's a big unknown.
You know, 60% of the people that seek abortions are people that already have children.
It's hard to say how many Americans might come to Canada for abortions.
Coming to Canada would be their only way out of not being criminalized for health care.
But some provinces will likely see more than others.
Especially in the prairie provinces, they are bordering with states whose trigger laws that are in place may make it a crime to get an abortion as of today.
In some urban areas, Canadian patients don't usually have a long wait for an abortion appointment. But what happens if Americans begin to access the healthcare system?
But even a small number of Americans coming up could overwhelm our health systems. And yes, we're concerned. Currently, we don't have the capacity or the access to accommodate Americans, at least not very many of them.
Right now in BC, very few Americans look to Canada for abortions.
It's not super common. I would say that our clinics and our sex sense line field calls, maybe 5 or 6 times a week for people looking for resources.
Whether that changes will be up to Americans to decide if it makes more sense to seek an abortion in states that still allow it or come to Canada. Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
Will he finish his term? Speculation is growing about Premier John Horgan's political future after an interview on CBC Radio's On the Island this morning. And as Mira Baines reports, the Premier is meeting with MLAs this weekend and says, stay tuned.
What's piquing the interest of political watchers and the public is Premier John Horgan's response to this question on CBC Radio's On the Island about how long he plans to stay in the role.
There's also speculation always about political leaders' future. Are you planning to continue as Premier throughout the rest of this elected term for the next 2-3 years?
Well, Gregor, I'm currently in Vernon with my caucus. We're engaging with people here in Vernon, Monashee. I have a cabinet retreat next week in Vancouver. We're plotting and planning and preparing for the next 2 years, and so I'll have more to say about that as we come out of those meetings.
The Premier has battled throat cancer along with leading the province through the pandemic. His lack of a definitive answer is raising eyebrows.
He certainly seems to have, as a lot of people do when they've come through those kinds of health scares, reevaluate what they want to do with the rest of their time. And, he's sort of seeing maybe it's time to get the rest of the team ready.
Just a few days ago, Horgan halted the costly rebuild of the Royal BC Museum, taking the blame himself.
It's my responsibility to say to you today that I made the wrong call.
He's trying to shoulder all of it in the interests of sort of freeing some of the leading candidates in his cabinet who might want to step up and replace him, right? That they're not going to be necessarily burdened with this decision.
If the premier does step down, it will trigger a leadership contest, possibly in the fall or later this year. Already there is speculation about which NDP MLAs could step up to try to become the party's next leader. BC Liberal leader Kevin Falcon has already set his sights on a future election in 2024. The premier meets with his cabinet in Vancouver next week. Over the coming days, Horgan may reveal his plans for his future or leave the public to speculate a little longer. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
It's feeling a lot more like summer around here. Warm, but thankfully no punishing deadly heat dome. Vancouver has released its heat preparedness plan, but experts say cities around the province need more long-term planning for extreme heat. As Michelle Gassoub shows us, it's right above us.
Stephen Shepherd knows exactly where he'll go during the next heat wave.
And it's sort of designated as a place that it will always be a lot cooler than out there, which gets more light and more sun.
In this corner of his front yard, it's noticeably less warm than out on the street, thanks to the cooling powers of this green canopy.
Partly because of shade, partly because of evapotranspiration. You know, they're putting moisture into the air the whole time, and that has a cooling effect as well.
Shepherd's research with the City of Vancouver shows neighborhoods with a natural green parasol can be up to 8 degrees cooler than those without one. The less green the neighborhood, the greater potential danger during extreme heat.
Some of the higher density areas, False Creek Flats, those areas have very low canopy levels, very vulnerable to heat and to other climate impact like flash flooding.
Around 23% of the City of Vancouver is covered by a green canopy. It's more than just a tree. It's enough trees for consistent coverage. The city wants to increase the canopy to 30% by 2050, but with 1 million people projected to arrive by then, it's a struggle to balance greenification and densification. But experts say it can be done.
You see these beautiful deciduous trees in front of a relatively new multifamily building, and that multifamily building actually has shading above the biggest windows.
This garden near Lonsdale in North Vancouver, an example of high-density housing and green space side by side. Boston says it's not just beautiful, but could be life-saving.
It is those neighborhoods that don't have the same strength of an urban tree canopy and green space where you do have higher mortality rates. And that's something that we have to turn around.
These green behemoths keeping us cool as our cities heat up. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
Meteorologist Nick Czernkovich joins us now with the first taste of BC weather as we tilt into the heat this weekend. What do we get, Nick?
Yeah, Dan, it is heating up. You heard earlier on temperatures starting to rise. They actually are going to rise as we head through the next few days. Here's a look at the temperature trend, and this is what you can expect through Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Now, today about seasonal, but you start to see some of this warm weather pushing in for tomorrow, for Sunday, and for Monday as well. And that's where the heat really cranks up, the humidity also rising in through Monday. It starts to cool off again back to seasonal by Tuesday. Special weather statements in effect across most of British Columbia. This for these temperatures that will be into the mid-30s. Humidex values approaching 40 at times through the weekend. Here's a look at Metro Vancouver for tomorrow. If you plan to hang out in the backyard, 30 degrees and Humidex 32. We'll have more coming up in a bit.
Sounds great. Thank you, Nick. And just in time for the hottest weekend so far this year, the Park Board is closing beaches at several popular spots. English Bay, Trout Lake, and Locarno are all closed for swimming until further notice. The reason is high E. coli levels. Swimming is also not allowed at Sandy Beach on Bowen Island. Vancouver Coastal Health says high counts of E. coli can increase the risk of stomach illnesses and skin or eye infections. The advisory will be removed when tests show the beach water quality has returned to an acceptable level. Vancouver Police says the body of Indigenous teen Ellie Osoup was found alongside another person's body on May 1st.
The cause of both these people's death, Noel and the other person, right now it is unknown. So that's something that we are working with the coroner to determine cause of death and the circumstances surrounding both their deaths. A memorial for the teen has appeared outside the Strathcona rooming house where she was found.
O'Soup was reported missing after leaving her Port Coquitlam home last spring. Police said everything is on the table as they try to figure out how and why she died. O'Soup was a member of Key First Nation in Saskatchewan. It is calling for a prompt and thorough investigation. Former BC Lion Joshua Bowden has been sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 14 years after being convicted of killing his girlfriend. A warning, some details in the story are upsetting. Bowden was found guilty of second-degree murder last fall in the death of 33-year-old Kimberly Hallgarth in 2009. Last week, court heard Bowden viciously beat her in the Burnaby home she shared with her 3-year-old daughter. The Crown argued Bowden choked her to death, then staged the scene to make it look like an accident. Bowden has maintained he is innocent. Most mayors in Metro Vancouver are seeking re-election this October, but one notable exception is in the Royal City, New Westminster, BC's oldest municipality. And as Dustin McElroy explains, it's shaping up as a race around responsibility.
When you think about New Westminster these days, you think about things like what you're seeing behind me. Change, lots of construction, lots of condos. When you look at the stats of the city, it's one that's been growing, it's one that has been getting younger, and it has a high number of people that are both renters and live in apartments. Now, 4 years ago, it was Jonathan Cote being re-elected as mayor of New West by a huge margin, getting his second term. But he's decided not to run again, and it means that it's a new race, an open race between two candidates at this point. Incumbent councillor Patrick Johnstone and Ken Armstrong of the New West Progressive Party. Now, when you ask them what they think the city should be doing, that's where you see the difference in their approaches.
And to be clear, we appreciate the need for affordable housing. We know we have a limited role as a municipal hall or a city council on that file. We need to work with federal and particularly provincial partners in that regard. But we can't overlook the fundamentals of keeping the streets safe, the streets maintained, the sidewalks maintained, and the parks maintained.
But we're also investing a bunch of money in the unsexy stuff, sewer separation, upgrading our water systems, upgrading our electrical substations, so that we're a resilient city. And I think that the last couple of years, through the pandemic and through the impacts of climate change, we recognize that a lot of the things we didn't think were city responsibility end up becoming things that the city really has to address.
Now, at the end of the day, Johnstone is probably the favorite, having been elected as a councillor once before and agreeing mostly with the direction of the city that's been taking place in New Westminster over the last 8 years while he's been a councillor and Cote has been a mayor. Of course, voters might decide for a change, but it could be that the change that they choose looks an awful lot like what's been here in the past. Justin McElroy, CBC News, New Westminster.
If you are a renter in BC, you could be in for a bit of a shock. That warning coming from the housing minister. High inflation rates could send rental prices soaring next year. As Yasmin Gandam reports, the province is now looking at limiting how much those rates can go up.
Renter Daniel Holmes says the cost to put a roof over his head is incredibly high.
Price of rent is ridiculous.
Holmes has a disability, which also requires him to live in a building that provides him extra support.
Now there's nothing available. If there is something available, it goes instantly. Very few of them are accessible for people with mobility issues.
He says he couldn't absorb another increase to his rent. In BC, the amount a landlord can raise the rent is tied to inflation. And with the cost of living at a nearly 40-year high, Finance Minister David Eby says renters could be in for a shock.
Over the last 12 months, we've seen inflation increase quite dramatically. And as you said in your introduction, puts us on track for quite a significant rent increase if government doesn't intervene.
Eby is looking for a way to lessen that blow. He's proposing a cap on rental rates to ease the hit on renters like Holmes. And it wouldn't be for the first time.
Certainly earlier in the pandemic, we did put a rent freeze on. That's not something that we're looking at, but we are looking at how and potentially whether to modify this allowable rent increase for tenants for this year.
Next month, his ministry will set the maximum allowable rent increase for 2023. If rent rises by 5 or 6%, that would be the biggest jump since 2004. One economist warns that shielding renters from inflation hikes could lead to more housing shortages.
What happens in any situation, rent, bags of Doritos, gasoline, whatever you could think of, if you put some sort of price cap on this thing, it creates a shortage. it creates a whole bunch of people that are going to now want to rent one-bedroom apartments.
In his opinion, any move to cap rental rate increases is political, but renters like Holmes say it's help they welcome.
Definitely putting a cap on it would be, help anybody out with a lower income, because when I was making big money, I didn't need a cap on it. But that's one of the answers is a cap.
That's all while some Metro Vancouver neighborhoods are hovering at near zero vacancy rates. Yasmin Cantum, CBC News, Vancouver.
TransLink hopes to make things easier for Metro Vancouver cyclists taking a ferry to the island. You're looking at the summer bike bus, which will have a rack that can hold up to 9 rides. It covers the route from Bridgeport Station in Richmond to the Tsawwassen Ferry Terminal. TransLink says it's also meant to help combat climate change.
And by seamlessly combining cycling with transit, the bike bus is just one of many ways that we are reducing our carbon footprint.
The bus will run from July 1st to September 5th, but there is a chance TransLink could make it permanent every summer. Canada reacts as the U.S. Supreme Court rolls back rights to access reproductive health. When we return, how constitutional changes south of the border could affect us here. Stick around. Thanks for staying with us on our commercial-free live stream tonight. Hello to everyone watching. The Anne of Green Gables musical has returned to PEI. Some of the children of Avonlea talked to us about the musical's return, including what their favorite part of the play really is.
Here you are, Miss Shirley. Your first taste of my... Whoa!
This is my first time acting on a real stage. I just love being a singer and a dancer, and this is just everything I dreamed of.
Part of the 2022 Summer Festival of Anne of Green Gables the musical.
When I found out I was one of the children of Avonlea, I was really excited.
And then just seeing how they've done it and everything, I just thought that was so magical. And
I think you should definitely come because it's such a great production and you'll definitely have a laugh too.
I think it's pretty fast-paced too, and the music is all really, really pretty.
I think it's gonna be great. Also, I kind of have to because I signed a contract, and I know that contracts, you have to do it if you sign it.
Oh, what a thrill I never thought I'd win.
What is your favorite part?
Probably when Matthew dies.
What? Why?
Because I like drama. Well, it's about a little girl named Anne. She gets adopted from an orphanage in Nova Scotia.
But they don't want her because she's a girl.
Why they sent in a boy? Did they mix it up? It's a question I've been asking. It's about how she finds a family and her home.
When she starts going to school, she meets a boy named Gilbert Blythe, and he calls her Carrots because of her red hair.
Carrots.
So she smashes her slate on top of his head.
That is amazing.
She gets into a lot of misadventures. She dyes her hair green at one point, has to cut it all off.
So she has to go through all this stuff about puff sleeves, and it's just really great.
Back to our top story now. The U.S. Supreme Court's decision to overturn constitutional protections for abortion has ignited strong reaction around the world, including here in Canada and BC. Nicole Williams now with the possible impacts that decision brings to this side of the border.
Today's a difficult day.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in Rwanda struggling to find the right words. He criticized the U.S. Supreme Court's decision.
Let me be really, really clear. In Canada, we will always defend women's rights to choose.
Despite such reassurances, Trudeau's foreign affairs minister had a stark warning for Canadians.
Your vote matters. And no country in the world, including Canada, is immune to what's going on in the United States.
For many years, Conservative caucus members have introduced private members' bills seeking to protect the rights of a fetus. But in a statement, opposition leader Candice Bergen says access to abortion was not restricted under Prime Minister Stephen Harper, and the Conservative Party will not introduce legislation or reopen the abortion debate. Still, today's decision to overturn Roe versus Wade in the U.S. has many wondering about the possible impact on this side of the border. There is no law in this country that explicitly guarantees the right to access an abortion, but the procedure was decriminalized in 1988 as a result of a landmark case involving Henry Morgentaler, a physician who performed abortions.
In terms of the legal analysis and the idea that Canada might take a page from the U.S. Supreme Court, I think the risk of that is fairly limited.
Then there are those that are hopeful today's Supreme Court decision will create change in Canada, with anti-abortion advocates rejoicing in watching the tide turn.
We're definitely looking forward to the possibility of reigniting the abortion debate here in Canada, and we hope that eventually we'll see protection for the preborn here as well.
While many here feel secure about Canada's abortion rights, across the country, advocates are still worried about access to the procedure and say there's still a lot more work to be done to serve those that make that choice. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
Free valet parking downtown. Imagine that. It could be yours in Victoria if you're riding a two-wheeler. More on the new service after this.
One of the world's greatest modern explorers died today. Jacques Cousteau, the famous French oceanographer, was 87 years old. From the waters of the Antarctic to the tributaries of the Amazon, Cousteau studied them all. Sasha Petrusik now on Cousteau's lifetime love affair with the deep.
From his first dive at the age of 10 in a Vermont lake to the depths of all the world's oceans, underwater exploration was his passion. Global education was his mission. Jacques Cousteau, the explorer in the red cap, whose popular TV show and award-winning films brought us the first movies of sharks and shipwrecks. Cousteau was born 87 years ago in France. He was an inventor, developing the aqualung, the first undersea breathing equipment, a sailor in his converted minesweeper, the Calypso. He was planning to build Calypso 2 after the original sank last year. And throughout, Cousteau was a determined environmentalist, constantly lobbying on behalf of the world's oceans, as he did at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro 5 years ago.
We are drawing blank checks on future generations. We don't pay, they are going to pay.
Today, Cousteau was mourned and praised at a UN conference on the environment.
It is with a sad heart that I say this, recognizing him as one of the giants of our time. We have really been committed towards promoting the welfare of the planet.
All right, this is a television camera in there.
Emery Christophe is one of the people Cousteau inspired. Today, he's an undersea photographer for National Geographic. 3 decades ago, he was a teenager hooked on Cousteau's movies.
I took some of my paper route money and I went out and bought a genuine Jacques Cousteau French squally mask. And
later, he worked alongside Cousteau, exploring sunken ships in Lake Ontario, lighting up a dark, silent world.
here it was, the 70% of our planet. We were beginning to see it now for the first time. And thanks to Cousteau, we were beginning to love it. And if you love something, you tend to want to protect it.
When I will be ready to leave this world, I will be sorry, not for my pleasure, but for all the things that I'm interested in that I will not be able to follow up.
The tributes pour in from around the world, from Washington to Wellington, New Zealand, from southern Africa to northern Europe. But the biggest tribute of all will be at Cousteau's funeral in Paris on Monday, in a country that knows him as the man who let us see the seas. Sasha Petrosek, CBC News, Washington.
Meteorologist Nick Czernkovich is back with the BC-wide weather forecast. Really the first nice summer weekend we're feeling here, Nick.
Yeah, no kidding, Dan. It only gets warmer from here. We've got lots of sunshine. We've got warm temperatures in the forecast right across the board. Let me show you temperatures in the lower mainland here. We're looking at temps that were anywhere from sort of the mid-20s down to just sort of the high teens, but that's really just by the water. Once you get a little bit inland, you're looking at temperatures in the mid-20s. There is, of course, a special weather statement in effect across most of British Columbia. This for the temperatures that are going to reach the mid-30s, humidex values that could touch the 40 mark, and some potential record breakers here as well in the forecast. You know, I really have to search for any sort of weather to speak of in terms of precipitation anyway. We're looking at generally just clear skies across the board. This carries through from Saturday through Sunday and into Monday as well. So we've got lots in the way of sunshine. It's really not until Tuesday where the pattern begins to break down, but 3 solid days of not just sunny weather, but hot weather as well. Here's a look at the forecast right across BC with temperatures approaching that 30 mark, and they get warmer as we head through the next couple of days. There's a look at your 5-day forecast for Metro Vancouver. Temperatures up to 32 on Sunday. A little cooler by the water, but 32. Monday at Vancouver Airport, we're expecting temperatures of about 26. The record, 26.1. And that was set back in 1937, so we'll have to watch for that. 3 days of good sunshine, Dan, then breaks down a little bit, but you know what? The weekend looks great.
We'll
and
take
that's what
it.
Matters.
Yeah. Exactly. Thanks very much, Nick.
You bet.
So you've checked your coat or your hat, maybe even a phone before a show. What about your bike or stroller? Now, some Vancouver venues do offer a service for cyclists, and now the city of Victoria is offering it up with a new spin on things. Take a look.
Today, we're here at the City Hall launching the downtown bike valet service. And it's a free bike parking service for people who ride their bikes downtown. And so basically what they do is they show up on their bikes. You have an attendant who takes your bike, gives you a tag number, and your bike is securely locked up for the whole time you're downtown.
This is one of a few initiatives to increase secure bike parking in the downtown. So Council has allocated $500,000 that we received from the federal government to do this pilot project, to make improvements in parkades, to create safe bike parking in parkades. The reason we're doing this is we are seeing a significant increase in people biking into the downtown with the creation of the bike network. And people want to come downtown with their kids, they want to spend the day or come down to work and have a safe, secure place to keep their bikes.
Why did you use the bike valet service today?
Well, for a long time, it's been a big impediment to coming downtown and doing shopping. I would dash in and dash out because of the bike thefts, and as you are aware, we've all got these big investments in our bikes. Now, I'm going to spend a couple of hours, I hope, doing the things I've wanted to do, spending some money, going to the bookshop, going to other places. Yeah, it's great.
I am worried a little bit about the security of my bike. This bike's been stolen once, and luckily I was one of the lucky ones that was able to get the bike recovered. So it's always on your mind when you're downtown.
We are big supporters of this type of program because we think it answers several issues. It's safe, it's secure, it's no charge for the public, and these are all people who are coming in to shop, to dine, to support local. and we want to see more of this type of thing.
Thanks to our shooter, Mike MacArthur, for that piece. Our next local news is right here at 11 o'clock with Michelle Elliott after the National and hockey. Good night. Enjoy the weekend. Stay safe.